Okay, so the next techniques, delayed hand and hand of destruction. Okay, so the next two techniques I teach are the punch techniques. And a lot of schools teach their techniques in different orders. I start with the inside punches. So we're going to start with delayed hand and hand of destruction, right? And these are, obviously I teach this as two separate techniques. It's the same technique, right? I mean, it's inside control. It's block, kick, job. It's very basic, which is why it's the first couple of punch techniques they learn. And I teach them against a full step-through punch, both techniques. I know that's, in some schools, that's considered overly traditional. I spoke in an earlier video about the fight scenario I'm developing, where somebody's grabbing, and then they're pushing, and then they're stepping through and attacking. Part of the conversation we're going to have when we talk about step-through punches is when people would do it, right? It's not like we're squared up, and out of nowhere they're going to be like a lunge punch. I mean, theoretically that could happen, but it's unlikely. It's more like they're attacking from out of range, so they need to step through to reach you. So to some degree, this is a punch that requires a certain amount of investment from your opponent, which means either they're really mad at you, right? They really want to hit you, and they want to hit you from way over here. Or something has happened prior to this that has built a sort of a geometric scenario where that's the proper footwork for them, either instinctively or as a result of their previous training. Like maybe they're a fighter and maybe they're just a guy who wants to hit you and you're further away and it just happens. And there's a lot of other ways it can sort of happen, like aborted kicks and stuff. But that's like a later conversation. You know, we can talk step-through punches all day. At this level, what I'm telling them is like, the train's coming to town, right? And part of that is because it's the first time I'm going to have them do like a karate technique against a punch. And I don't want it to be like, you screwed it up, you screwed it up, you screwed it up. I want it to be like, get ready, block, counterattack, right? And then they're sort of learning like, oh, I'm interacting, right? I'm hitting this guy. I'm learning to change his position. Like, yeah, like, I want them to be able to defend themselves right away. And I feel like they can at this point if, you know, like if they apply themselves. Like, nothing I teach you works unless you choose to use it, right? But assuming that you apply yourself, then yeah, by now you've done some pretty good training and drilling. Like, you've got some basic tools in your kit. I'm not saying you're ready for anything, but you know more than you did before you started. So here comes the big hammer. It's the step-through punch, and this is how I teach delayed sword, or delayed hand, or fallen sword, or whatever else you call it. I know a lot of people do it against the grab. I do it against the punch. We're going to step back. We're going to block that arm. Is it an inward circling block? Is it a hammering block? I tend to do my blocks higher. I tend to block, especially at the beginner level, more with this part of the arm, and so we tend to circle through the face in this fashion. You know, I really want them to think, I like to use the term erase the face, and I want them to think like, later on we'll have conversations about like targeted blocking and stop hitting and you know, contouring punches and striking hands out of the air and catching hands out of the air. For now, I want them to just like throw everything you got at that arm. Like an arm's coming and just knock it down, right? Because this is the first time an arm's been coming at them like that. Even though I say that, it's the first time in a technique. We've been drilling this stuff in their drills for, you know, weeks. But it's the first time that we've done a codified, named karate technique where somebody is doing that. And that all that does is it gives us a chance to say, today we're going to study this part of fighting, right? Because we've been doing it for a while, but now we're like, we're going to have a serious conversation about this. And I want you to remember it for the rest of the time that you train with me. That's why it's a technique, right? Drills are developing skills. Techniques are important pieces of the curriculum that you have to learn and understand and continue to improve upon, right? Again, that's how I do karate. So, delayed sword, you know, erase the face, protect yourself. You know, and yeah, if it's a low punch, we've done all these sort of other blocking drills, so they kind of already know. If I move the punch, you know, it's rule number one isn't clear this zone. Rule number one is don't get dead, right? Rule number one is live to fight another day. It's not, you know, it's not do it by the book. So we're going to drill that. Like, yeah, when I first do it, it's going to be, and I'm going to hit them. That's the other thing. Like, people are like, oh, you know, this isn't realistic. You can see it coming. You can see it coming. But a beginner, I come from back here, I tell you what, I hit people all the time with that because they kind of, what do? Right? Well, that's what I want to train out of them. That's why I'm going to teach them to do this. So the punch comes in, step back and block. Check this zone, and now we already did the bracing wedge conversation with the low zone, right? We did all the neutral bow stuff. So now I'm saying, you know, neutral bow. Fighting stance it up, bro. Somebody's taking a swing at you. Like, this isn't a grab, right? This isn't a push. This is like I said, the train's coming. So, like, it's go time. So, block, check, strong stance. Ideally, we're going to have the whole distance is your best friend conversation. Pretty much right away, we're going to start talking about getting off the line, and we're going to start adding footwork to this. But again, ideal phase, day one, lesson one, step back, block, check, good fighting stance. Front kick to the groin, land with a hand sword, you know, contouring. We're going to try to hit the SCM. I mean, whatever's whatever. Again, all the other conversations will occur as well. At the beginning, block, kick, chop, and return to control. It's always come back to check, right? It's always end, or you know, end your striking or end your pattern in a checking, in a controlled, in a safe position, out of range, or controlling your opponent, or checking his weapons. It's never like hit and, you know, go to sleep. Like, that's what cover outs are. They're just a point reference that says, if you stop hitting, either get away, or if you stop hitting, get control, right? Don't just stop hitting and do this. That's the reason the techniques are designed that way. At least that's what I tell my students. So, block, kick, chop, all the other stuff, right? At this point, it's the first time they've kicked somebody, right? Like, they've done some of this, and we've done some of this, but this is the first, like, kick that they've worked on, and it's front kick, right? Front kick's always the first kick. It's the jab. It's the straight, nearest weapon, nearest target, right? And yeah, when we do the technique, we'll have the conversation about, am I kicking him in the hip, am I kicking him in the groin, am I kicking him in the bladder? Honestly, we're going to drill it all three ways. We're a cup to class, so kick him where it hurts, right? Like, I don't care what that is. Kick that guy. He tried to hit you, you know? Don't start fights. So if somebody tries to take a swing at your head, kick him in the groin. Kick him and knock him down, right? So block, kick, and again, you know, we have the volume conversation every time. We have the volume conversation long after there's no reason to have it anymore, right? I have that conversation with brown belts. If they haven't learned it by then, I don't know, we all learn and grow as we go. So block, kick, chop, and that's how I teach that first technique. And we're learning this inside position from here, right? So he was in a left stance. He stepped through to a right stance. We went closed face on him. And it's just, and we're going to do this so many more times, right? Throughout the system, that technique is just, I mean, that's just going to happen again and again. And this is the first time, right? So, clear, strike, strike. The next technique I teach is hand to destruction, and it's the same thing on the other side, right? So instead of this, boom, this guy gave you one of these, boom. The only difference is everything, but it's the reverse stance, it's the circle versus the linear, you know, it's all that stuff. But that's why, you know, we just had that conversation. Now we're going to have the opposite conversation. Welcome to the next step in your journey. So, block, kick again to whatever, strike again to whatever, and now we're going to introduce the waiter's tray check as a block. So, or as a new basic. So defend, kick, strike, control, always return to control, and then what are we going to do? Like, what's the next most obvious drill? It's either that punch or it's that punch, and every single time someone puts a hand towards you, you block, kick, chop. So it doesn't, and obviously right away you take out the step, right? So you drill with the step for a minute, boom, boom, and then you just start saying it's this, right? And then you start adding the cross. And all you do is if a hand comes in, you knock it out of the way, you strike with your legs and you strike with your hands. So we've done the grab stuff, right? We've done the push stuff, and now we're getting into the punches, right? And it's, again, we're going to work star block, and we're going to work blocking, or form one, and we're going to work the whole rest of the kenpo system for the rest of our lives. And here's what we're doing when we learn these two techniques, and that becomes the next thing. And then we can build the whole scenario. So a guy's grabbing you, and he's pushing you, and he's throwing punches. And guess where we go from there? It's going to be, we're going to add in the kicks and the control positions and the tackles and the takedowns and the locks and the chokes and the weapons. So eventually, and pretty quickly, I mean, you can start doing this drill, by the yellow belt test, by the end of their first rank. Now, obviously every time they get better, the drill gets better. But by the end of their first rank, they can have somebody just attack them with any kind of attack. Grabs, pushes, punches, kicks, hugs, holds, locks, chokes, weapons, because we're going to cover some of that too. And they've learned techniques and ways to defend, and we've drilled all that. And that's why I build my system the way I do. And then we're going to repeat that on every single belt rank to some degree, and sometimes we're going to focus on one thing or we're going to focus on another. And there's a lot of other things we practice too, like sparring and ground fighting, and all that stuff ties back into everything else we do. And I'm very traditional. We do a lot of sets, we do a lot of forms, we do a lot of line drills, we do a lot of basics training. That's how I came up, that's what I believe in. So, and all these things, pile on top of each other and build on each other. So those are my two punch techniques I teach at this level, the inside and the inside, and then we work the whole, inside control drill. And it's, we start in here, stay inside the arms. Later on, we're going to have the conversation about outside, and then we'll have the conversation combining the two. So if you have any other questions, let me know.